Hello and welcome back, my friends. I know I just said recently that I wasn't going to be posting as many videos, and now it seems like I'm doing the same. But here's the thing, I had patrons asking me to read books and review them, and so that's what I'm doing. If you didn't know, there is a tier on my Patreon where you can boss me around, and that is request books for me to review. I won't always take you up on those requests. I have veto rights, but for the most part, if it has an audiobook, I will give it a go. So here we are. Today we are looking at a book that was suggested by the same patron who suggested that terrible Vietnam dinosaur book that I hated, and the fact that I hated it made a bunch of fans very, very cross with me. I wanted to give you that context because this patron is like, okay, well, maybe here is an animal attack thriller book that is not going to be quite so offensive. And so they asked me to read The Meg. Or is it just Meg? I think it's The Meg. No, it's just Meg. I don't know. I think it's The Meg from my library, like the copy from my library, but it's Meg here on Goodreads. That's why I'm looking over to the side. I've got Goodreads on my laptop over here. So anyway, it's the one about the gigantic shark, all right? That was made into a movie a little while ago.
It's Megalodon.
He's kidding, right?
Giant shark book. It's like Jaws except for pumped up on steroids. So let's find out what I thought about this book about monster prehistoric animals attacking people. But first, let's read the blurb. By the way, I did read the revised and expanded edition, so it is, to my understanding, better than the original, which I would hope if it was revised. So we'll go with that. On a top secret dive into the Pacific Ocean's deepest canyon, Jonas Taylor found himself face to face with the largest, most ferocious predator in the history of the animal kingdom. The sole survivor of the mission, Taylor is haunted by what he is sure he saw and still can't prove exists. I'm going to mispronounce this. Caradon? Megalodon? I don't know. My patron's probably screaming at the screen how badly I pronounce that. The massive mother of the great white shark. The average prehistoric Meg weighs in at 20 tons and could tear apart a Tyrannosaurus rex in seconds. Written off as a crackpot suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, Taylor refuses to forget the depths that nearly cost him his life. With a PhD in paleontology under his belt, Taylor spends years theorizing, lecturing, and writing about the possibility that the Meg still feeds at the deepest levels of the sea. But it takes an old friend in need to get him to return to the water. And a hotshot female submarine pilot, we'll talk about her, to dare him back into the high-tech miniature sub, diving deeper than he ever has before. Taylor will face terror like he's never imagined, and what he finds could turn the tides bloody red until the end of time. Meg is about to surface, and when she does, nothing and no one is going to be safe, and Jonas must face his greatest fear once again. His greatest fear being a giant shark. A pretty reasonable fear if you're this guy. Also, he's claustrophobic, but that really comes and goes, and he's pretty over that by the end of the book, but at the beginning it's a little bit of a problem for him. So I'm sure that my patron is waiting on tenterhooks to find out, have I finally found a book about a prehistoric monster that Julian likes, or is this another one that she's going to tear apart and eviscerate and hate on? Well, I thought it was fine. 3 stars, middle of the road. The Meg was mid for me, and we'll talk about why, but I will tell you that one of the major factors that is just a me thing that no one can predict is that I do not find sharks scary, even giant sharks. I think it's because I live so far inland. Sharks have never been a fear for me. So it's very easy for me to feel extremely separated from the scenario in this book. And as such, I can get into the thrilling scenes, but I'm not getting as emotionally invested as I probably would if I was afraid of sharks. But I'm not. I don't find them scary, even giant ones, because all you have to do to escape a shark, even a giant one, is don't go in the water. Now, obviously, this book gives a lot of reasons why they have to deal with this shark. They can't just not go in the water. But from here, in my position in Wisconsin, just don't go in the water. You know, like it's an enemy that is so easy to avoid. It's just not scary to me. So I think that may have been a factor, is just like while I was cruising along, just enjoying this book on a purely, this is inoffensive, fun level, I was never nervous. I was a little bored by it at some places, because there's only, again, so many ways that a shark can eat people. And like this book kind of has covered it. Hilariously, the shark, of course, develops a taste for human flesh so that it has a reason to keep eating people, because humans are such a small, like physically small thing to feed on when it could be eating whales. But it developed a taste for humans. And that's why it goes, this giant shark goes out of its way to consume humans. Even when there is other better prey nearby, it's like, oh, but I need that one guy in a small boat. I need him specifically. Fuck that guy. I will leave this whale carcass that I'm chewing on and go after that guy. And like the book hand waves it away, like I said, as like the Meg following its instincts and the Meg having a taste for human flesh, both of which were very silly, in my opinion, but they work to get the plot going. Because ultimately, this is a book about people getting eaten by a giant shark. So the plot is extremely simple. This guy, Jonas, he is a scientist adventurer. He's the scientist adventurer type. And of course, like it said in the blurb, he's got the trauma of his previous encounter with the Meg when he was in the military, but at that time he was extremely sleep deprived and could have hallucinated it. And so everybody just thinks that he just like lost it and just freaked out and got some of his team killed. Well, all of his team except him killed, because the military is never gonna like sit down and be like, yeah, we like overworked this man to the point where he could be hallucinating giant sharks. They're just like, it's your fault for potentially hallucinating a giant shark. But anyway, now he's lecturing, and then in a lecture, in walks a total hottie Asian bombshell. Yes, she's Asian because the book really likes to identify people by their like nationality. It's a little off-putting. It does it a few too many times. It keeps reminding you what people are, and it's like, do I need this? But in walks an Asian hottie, and she's like, hey, I am hotshot submarine pilot Terry, I think was her name. I think her name was Terry. Know that this book takes place in the 90s, by the way, and is extremely rooted in the 90s. And so I think the author was going for, like, her Japanese father came to America and wanted to give his children very, very American names. And so he named his daughter Terry and his son Jack. I don't remember, but he also had, like, a very white name. So anyway, she challenges our man, Jonas, to get back in that pilot seat and pilot a sub down into the Mariana Trench to go find one of their other subs that crashed down there, and her brother is going to go with him, even though she really wants to go with him. And I think this is probably just a fine time to talk about this character, because there are 2 women in this book. 2. So many men. 2 women. We could have thrown a few more women at this book, just tangentially, but no. 2, like, named women in this book. One of them is her, who is eventually the love interest for Jonas, which I have problems with for a number of reasons, one of which is that she's a lot younger than him. But that's okay, because he's like a hotshot scientist, and men in these books just deserve to be given women. Like, that's their award for being cool guys, is they get a woman. That's their prize. But also, the romance in this is so poorly written. Like, there's no chemistry. Like, all of a sudden, they just decide to flip a switch, and she likes him, and he likes her. Like, the most we get is that when she first walks in to the scene where he's lecturing, he, like, finds her attractive on the page. He's like, she's very hot. And that's it. And then they just bicker, but not in a flirty way. They just bicker, because she really wants to pilot submersibles, and people keep giving Jonas her job. And that's hot to her, apparently. The fact that Jonas keeps getting the job that she wants to do. And she never gets to do it. Like, at one point, I think once, she got to pilot a submersible. And if I recall correctly, I might not remember correctly, so feel free to correct me, but she ends up needing to be rescued in that scenario. So, like, she's supposed to be this, like, hotshot sub-pilot, whatever, but she barely gets to do it, and she keeps being like, let me prove myself, and then she never gets an awesome badass scene where she gets to prove herself. In the end, she just sleeps with crusty old Jonas. And I'm like, what? Where did that come from? There's nothing. The author just decided, oh yeah, books have romance, and there's a woman and a man, so pair them up. The other woman character is Jonas's spouse, who is actively cheating on him. So she's basically his ex, because he's like, yeah, she's been cheating on me forever with this other guy. And she is your stereotypical obsessed with her image, obsessed with, like, she's a reporter, and you know how those lady reporters are and everything in the 90s. They just got to get the scoop. They're just a determined little woman. She's got to get the scoop. And so she does stupid, dangerous things, because she's just obsessed with, like, getting the big story, because that's her personality, is sleeps with man who is not Jonas and wants to get the big story, is very self-absorbed, and her mission is the only thing that matters. And normally I'd be like, good for her, but we're not supposed to like her. So our two options are woman who will sleep with Jonas and woman who will not sleep with Jonas and thus gets eaten by a giant shark. I know it annoys a few people who watch my channel when I point out subtle or unintentional sexism in books written by men, but it's there. It's not there, and I'm not going to ignore it. As long as we're talking about questionable things, let's get the only other thing that really I noticed out of the way, aside from just the general way that this is a book written by a man and set in the 90s. It sounds like a book written by a man set in the 90s. You've read one of those books, you've read this one too. They all sound the same. I don't know if all of these men went to the same school. You can hand me any book written by a man in the 90s, and without telling me anything about it, and I will be able to identify that it's written by a man in the 90s. They just all sound the same. But because this is set in the 90s, someone does use the F slur derogatorily, of course, but it's, I believe, only once or twice, and it didn't bother me as much as, say, in the Terrible Dinosaur book, where there were more slurs and also lots of horrific war crimes, because this book, the Meg is trying very hard to be grounded in a believable reality, whereas the Silly Dinosaur book was set in a super fictionalized Vietnam, where the Russians have some kind of nuclear something or other that created a black hole that summoned dinosaurs. That is extremely silly. Did we need the realism of the slurs and the war crimes? You know what I'm saying? That's the difference for me, is that, like, this book didn't do it very much. And also, this book felt way more grounded than the dinosaur book did. Still know that that's in there if that, like, really, really bothers you. I don't think that should put you off reading this if this sounds interesting, because it only happens like once, maybe twice, but it is in there. I do not recall any other slurs, although I may have missed them. Just, your usual tacit sexism. Anyway, back to it. So eventually, obviously, Jonas, he goes down there and he awakens the mother Meg, who is this giant, enormous shark who is also pregnant with baby sharks. So not only is she going to come up to our area of the sea, but she's going to poop out some babies so there can be more books in this series. And she does, and she starts eating people and fucking up whale migration. And the guy who hired Jonas, I believe, there's a lot of side characters, and they're all dudes, and they all blend together into, like, this one amorphous blob for me, and a lot of them get eaten. But there's this one guy who really wants to bring the Meg into his, like, special, he's, like, got an aquarium, but the Meg will be living in this, like, special bay, sort of Free Willy-esque, I think, so that it can be kept safe, because he's like, it should be a protected species, it's almost extinct, we need to save it, even though it is eating so many people. And I don't know how he intends to feed this thing, because it eats a lot. Whenever we're with the Meg, it is always just food, 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 food. Like, this shark is never chill. She always wants to be eating. And I don't understand how this man thinks he's going to feed her and also prevent her from eating the guests, because she will throw herself up out of the water to get a human. Like, she's that determined to have human on the menu. So this guy is not clearly thinking this through very well. But also, like I said, this shark is just eating people like crazy. It loves to eat people. And so we watch it eat a bunch of people. As you'd expect from a shark book, we just pan away from Jonas and whatever he's doing every now and then to watch it eat some people. Then we go back and check in on Jonas. Okay, he's still submarining or whatever, trying to study the shark, and we're back to watching the shark eat people. And eventually Jonas's ex-wife does go down in a giant, like, shark cage, essentially, because she wants footage of the shark. And of course, she gets eaten by the shark because she didn't want to sleep with Jonas anymore. But don't worry, the girl who does want to sleep with Jonas will be fine. Also because people keep preventing the girl who does want to sleep with Jonas from going in the water, which again is a fairly decent way to protect yourself from the shark. But she does go on boats a lot, and boats are not always safe from the shark either. So, because like I said, this shark likes to eat people a lot, and it will throw itself out of the water for one measly human. It's like about the size of a potato chip to this thing, and it will always go for the potato chip. Anyway, so that goes on for a while. Jonas is trying to catch it, and then we cut to the shark eating people. Jonas is trying to catch it. The shark has its babies. The shark is eating people. Jonas is trying to catch it. They sedate it for a hot minute, but obviously that doesn't last, and things go horribly awry, as they do. And it's just that for a while. Things going awry, people getting eaten. I will say that the submarine scene was sufficiently tense for me. That was the only time I really cared. That was the only time I was kind of rooting for the humans to survive, was there was a scene where a submarine got attacked by the shark. And I was like, I don't know why. I think it's because the people in the submarine felt extra screwed, but also extra competent. Like, it was interesting watching some very competent people deal with the situation, because mostly it's just a bunch of people running around uselessly as a shark eats them. These people were like, okay, we have plans, we have things in place to try and save ourselves. Like, what can we do? Let's fight this shark. Let's run from, because they're in a submarine. So they have to be calm and rational as best they can and try to handle the situation. Obviously they do not survive, but like the submarine scene, sufficiently tense. I was seated for the submarine scene. Everything else, pretty boring to me, but that one was good. But eventually, they do have to actually kill the shark because she's too dangerous, and also Jonas's ex-wife's lover is getting involved, and he decides to take vengeance on the shark. He's such a non-character, and it's so dumb. But I pretty much ignored him. So eventually Jonas ends up, this is where the book jumps the shark, if you will, goes fully off the rails. Jonas ends up inside the shark and essentially does a Sharknado, ripping his way out of the shark. Except for instead of a chainsaw, he uses a shark's tooth, because irony.
I cannot show you the scene of that from Sharknado because it is way too gory, but if you have seen Sharknado, you know what I'm talking about. And if you have not, and you like bad movies, go watch Sharknado.
That's how he wins. He just gouges his way out of the shark. Don't ask too many questions about that scenario. You're supposed to just sit and enjoy that scenario. While I feel the rest of the book is fairly soundly grounded, that is silly. And fun silly, but silly. And then, Jonas gets a smooch from his lady, and they slept together before the climax, and I felt nothing. Like, negative chemistry between those two, and she could do better, honestly, than crusty old Jonas. As main characters go, Jonas is pretty much your bog standard adventurer science man. Like, there's nothing from the 90s. It's not got a lot going on. He's just really into sharks. And her, apparently. And he has claustrophobia sometimes when it suits the plot. Not in any way that would actually stop him from succeeding, just enough so he's, like, stressed. But yeah, that's the Meg. I thought it was fine. The writing was standard. Nothing special, but nothing atrocious either. It was fine. Everything about this book was fine. This is like I said, mid. I think I'd probably give it 2.5 stars instead of just 3, but I round up when I give it star ratings on Goodreads. But yeah, 2.5 stars from me for the Meg, partially again because I am not afraid of sharks. The fear factor of this was significantly reduced by the fact that sharks don't scare me. Those were my thoughts. I hope this was a satisfactory review for my patron. We're getting closer to maybe Julian likes a prehistoric creature feature. I don't know how long this book was, but it didn't feel super long, so that's good. Like, I was a little bit worried that it was going to be too chunky and I was going to be dragging along through this, like, extremely boring book, but it didn't feel that long. So, good for it, I guess. It was not making me long for death. That's a plus. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. But if you are looking for something that is wildly different from that to read, I have books that you can check out. I do have a supernatural thriller. So if you want something thriller adjacent that's not about a giant shark and is about something supernatural and is a novella, so it's super quick and easy to read, check out my book Second Floor. Otherwise, if you like fantasy books, I have several of those. I have another one that's either coming out very soon or has come out, because I don't know exactly when this video is going to go up, but I think this video is going to go up before November 1st, which is when my next fantasy book is planned to release. So check that out, or check out the first one if you want to read that before the second one. Anyway, this is a lot of jibber jabber, but also reminder that I have a Patreon where at a certain level you can boss me around and request that I read books about giant sharks or dinosaurs or whatever. Plus other rewards at other levels that might interest you, so go check it out. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see all of you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye!
Good news, everyone!
It's patron time. Airy 925, Indigo Marmot, Choco Tina, Adriana, Laura, Wanda, Clara, Lisa, Jen, Tex, Moon Island, Zenith, Ashley, Corey, Bunny, Nemo, Tactical Hotdog, Haley, History Nerd, Pixelizzy, Raya, Christina, Cameron, Lady Kragan, Jose, Lunar Muse, AJ, Marshy, Semi-Dark, GK Scout, Annika, Jen, Tina, Laknanga, SB Boots, Martha Baggins, July, Bird Anonymous, Sarah, Kat, 78 kilograms of shade, Veda, Ingrid, Roma, Haley, Sam, Kira, Mooney, Pudamancer, Kohikaro, Kirsten, Bear, Jojo Bookish, Robin, Ursula, Caitlin, Jessica, KJ, Mufflier, Celia, Neon MVM, Deborah, Swamp Goblin Waifu, Sophia, Merween, Kit, Light Julie, Patrick, Callison, Vampire Antihero, Shelby, Jesper, Rennie, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, and Amanda. Thank you all again so much for being my patrons. You keep the lights on around here.